Great, thanks and welcome to the last ArcGIS Runtime session at this year's Developer Summit. This is the ArcGIS Runtime, everything you wanted to know about the ArcGIS Runtime SDKs but were afraid to ask session. It's a live Q&A for the entire hour where you have access to the Runtime development team and experts on the team. This is obviously a virtual event, and so we're going to be handling this a little bit different than maybe we've done in the past when we were in person. My name is Rex Hansen. I'm a product manager for ArcGIS Runtime, and I'm joined by 6 of my colleagues, and I'll hand it off to Devesh and they can introduce themselves.
Thanks, Rex. Hello, everyone. My name is Devesh Goyal, and I'm the product engineering lead for ArcGIS Runtime.
Hi, I'm Nick Furness. I'm a product manager alongside Rex for the ArcGIS Runtimes, focusing mostly on iOS.
Hi, my name is Mike Branscombe. I'm the product engineering lead for ArcGIS Runtime SDK for .NET. I also am the, product engineering lead for the ArcGIS Runtime local server and a product owner for the 3D layers feature team.
Hi, I'm Mark Baird, and I'm the product engineering lead for the Runtime SDK for Java.
Hey everybody, my name is James and I am the developer lead for the Qt Runtime SDK.
Hi everyone, I'm Rich Rue. I'm the product owner for the Geodatabase and Utility Network.
Hi everyone.
Oh, sorry, Ram.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Rama Chintapalli. I'm the principal product engineer and product owner for the Android team.
Great, thanks, Rama. So just to kick this off, just want to kind of set some of the context for this live Q&A session. Nick and I published a kind of a roadmap to ArcGIS Runtime sessions this year at our virtual developer summit, and as part of that, we promoted the ArcGIS Runtime Everything You Want to Know About the ArcGIS Runtime SDKs We're Afraid to Ask session, and in this we opened up a board, a Dev Summit 2021 live Q&A board in the ArcGIS Runtime SDKs section of the Esri community. And so that board was open on Monday and available for questions. And we have a number of questions that are out there. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to answer those questions first because they were asked earlier before this session. During this session, please use the live Q&A that's part of the session, right? So the audience Q&A, and you can ask questions there. And we're going to transition to that here shortly after we answer some of the questions here on the board. Now, with that said, if there are any questions that you'd like for us to follow up on right away, follow up on after the session, please use the Dev Summit 2021 live Q&A board in the Esri community to ask your question, and we can follow up on that. Now, you'll actually see in the announcement for this session, there'll be a link to it, the esriurl.com runtime live Q&A. You can also go back to our blog post earlier, and there's a link to the live Q&A board from the blog post announcement earlier this week. Great. So we'll start here on the board, and then, like I said before, we'll transition over to the audience Q&A as part of this session. So first question here is, are there any plans to bring ArcGIS mission capabilities to runtime? And so this was answered by our own Carrie Robinson, who's our lead in this space, and provided some additional details and capabilities on this question. We evidently, Michael has some unique and compelling offline capabilities that he needs to be able to support. And we are looking at being able to support adding some of the capabilities to the ArcGIS Mission Responder app through runtime, actually. So enabling runtime, providing a developer experience that really powers the Mission Responder application. I think one key thing there is that although we have intention to do that, it's really getting a better idea of what some of those capabilities are. And so there's a follow-up here. If you have anything additional to add here, there's obviously a number of opportunities here by adding fundamental developer level capabilities to runtime to really light up the ArcGIS Mission Responder app, but also as a developer experience, as developer tools, we want to be able to provide an experience where custom applications can be built using the same technology, same concepts, same workflows. So it'd be good to understand what some of those needs are. Feel free to add to this question. Next question is how to integrate knowledge graphs into the ArcGIS platform. Now, I suspect I have a little experience here with knowledge graphs and some of the work that's going on here to be able to draw connections between a variety of different spatial phenomena. I know that there's some work going on within the system, within ArcGIS Pro, to be able to expose knowledge graphs and exposing them in a way that would make them available to other clients. That would mean, for example, web and native clients such as Runtime. I'm not aware yet of any specific plans within Runtime to support this. We'd like to be able to see how that rolls out within the system first. Pro is a great starting point there, so we'll see what happens in that space going forward. I'm not sure if anybody else on the call has any more insight into progress in that space, maybe with respect to Runtime. Okay, so something we're keeping a pretty close eye on at this point. We'll see. We'll see if there's a way to light that up and make it available as it starts to mature. So any WebAssembly support on the roadmap. So it looks like question here is we've already got our hands dirty using Qt and .NET Blazor for WebAssembly development. We saw that the geometry routines of the new JavaScript API use WebAssembly too. Is there anything planned extending ArcGIS web app builders or developing web apps using WebAssembly? So I believe that the ArcGIS API for JavaScript supports WebAssembly today, which is what you mentioned here in your question. I'm not sure about the, there's no plans specifically for Runtime to support any sort of a WebAssembly or a JavaScript developer experience directly at this point, if it's Runtime specific. I'm not entirely sure about the web app builders at this point, if that's something that they're adding support for, depending on. I'm not sure if anyone else on the call, it's a little bit outside of our wheelhouse, but maybe something we could follow up on, even though it's in the Runtime section.
Very briefly, I can add that the Qt company's SDKs do support WebAssembly, and it is something the Qt team has kind of done a little bit of R&D into. We don't have any plans to roll out a WebAssembly target for Qt right now.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, James. Good to get some insights there. Next question, James, this looks like it might be going back to you. Is there any specific roadmap when ArcGIS Runtime supports the new Qt 6 version?
Yeah, so the Qt team is hard at work kind of planning the roadmap right now. We don't have any firm plans about when we will move to Qt 6. And as I mentioned in a previous session, it's not binary compatible. So Qt 5 and Qt 6 are not binary compatible. So we need to make some product decisions about whether we try to support both at the same time or whether we kind of make the jump to Qt 6 all in one go. And we haven't made that choice yet. We're hard at work trying to figure out what do our users need. So we want to hear from people like this individual here, right here. We want to get as much community feedback as we can to see what do our users want to do. Are they trying to move to Qt 6 or are they more trying to stay on Qt 5 for as long as possible? I'm sure we'll have a mix, but this information will be invaluable in helping the Qt team kind of make this decision. So no firm plans as of right now.
Okay, still looking for feedback.
Yes.
Just really a better vision into what the intentions are of our developer community. Yeah.
That's right.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, James. All right. Geospatial engine for spatial analytics implemented in Rust. So I'm not aware of anything specific here at this point, although I have heard that folks have tried to, I believe this does relate to Qt, actually in C++, because there's a C++ API there that I guess you could create a Rust wrapper for to access some of the geospatial capabilities in Qt. I'm not aware of anybody doing that with the Runtime SDK for Qt. James, is there any feedback on that you've heard of?
There's no info I've got on that, but like you said, I think it would be technically possible, but we'd have to do some internal R&D to see if it would actually pan out.
Okay, good. Yeah, good to understand. Might be good to get a little more of a handle there on whether or not this is something that would be valuable for us to research further, actually. So the Esri contributor here, GeoInt engineer, actually be good to understand maybe some of the workflows that you'd like to support in that space too. So, but thanks for asking the question. That's good. Good thing to get us thinking about. Okay, and with that, I'm going to switch over to answering questions in the session Q&A for the audience. All right. Okay, so top question I did cover because we were talking about how we're going to handle questions in this live Q&A as it's virtual. Again, just a reminder, if there's a question that you'd like follow-up on after this session, please ask it in the Dev Summit 2021 live Q&A board in the Esri community, and we'll follow up as soon as possible. Otherwise, we'll just answer questions that are in the audience Q&A for this session. So first question, is the NMEA parsing functionality available at the light license level? The simple answer to that, I guess I'll take that one. The simple answer to that is yes, actually. There is no higher license level required for NMEA parsing. Next question, are there any plans to offer some kind of runtime for use in web services and APIs? We get a lot of requests on this, and we see a number of folks that have asked about using runtime in a service, because technically in some cases it actually works. We don't test it, and legally it's not allowed. It's against our terms of service. That said, what would be interesting here is to find out exactly what you'll need or what your intentions are when using runtime in a service. We've seen that in most cases, folks are using it as a JSON serializer or deserializer, working with geometry and features. We also see folks using a geometry engine effectively within services. And so it's a fairly operational or programmatic solution. And those are probably different areas that we'd be looking at if we were looking to productize, really think of it as like an enterprise edition of runtime going forward. Now, there are no plans for that right now, but we are thinking about how to best make that available. It'll probably, if it becomes available, it would be probably under a different license model, actually, as it would be designed for concurrent usage. We'd also need to be able to refine some of the operational capabilities there, and remove some of the ability to generate map or scene images, as we wouldn't want to cannibalize or overstep our work there with respect to our existing enterprise and online services. So what would be valuable here is to get a little more feedback on what you're looking to be able to do with runtime in a service, actually, and we could take that and use it to better target actually some of these capabilities and workflows going forward. So great question. You're in good company. There's a lot of folks out there. We'd like to do this in the long term. Next question, will the runtime for Android support smart forms? Rama.
Yep, I'll take that. Okay. Smart forms as an API, we don't have them supported as an API, but I think we still support them as in terms of raw JSON or unsupported JSON from those individual objects. We still support them. I think some of our internal apps are using them already. It's something we'll look into actually making it more formal through the API, but you should be able to get those additional unsupported JSONs from those individual objects and work through for the smart forms. Unless Devesh, if you have anything else to add on that.
Yeah, I'll just add that that is one of those areas we're looking at and we're interested to build out, perhaps even have a toolkit component and some user experience to bring it to life. But it's not in the near term plans yet.
Good to know for sure. Thanks, Devesh and Rama. Next question, are there plans to make routing and geocoding services exportable, like base maps or feature services? Devesh, do you want to tackle that one? Sure.
We get this question every now and then. It's interesting to us to want to solve it, but we don't have any firm plans on providing this yet. We need to have some more conversations on how people actually want to use it offline, what happens at the edges of the data that is clipped when you take it offline, what the expectations are and what the use cases are. Because generally this then leads into, can I get traffic and how do we get traffic offline? And those discussions lead to some really hard problems. So yeah, it's come up. We think about it from time to time. I don't have any definite plans or timelines to offer at this point. But come by, talk to us, and we can discuss it further.
Indeed, I think we'd like to see that happen, actually, right? So we're certainly on board with that. Obviously, there's more players in that space. So Let's see here. Next question. Are there plans to encrypt the geodatabase downloaded from sync? I'm assuming downloaded from a sync-enabled feature service. I don't know, Rich, do you want to chime in on this one? Is that something that you?
Sure, I'll give it a shot. So yeah, there's no current plans to do this at the sync level. Not the first time I've heard it. I know some customers will use a device that supports encryption on the device and encrypting it that way, but no plans to encrypt the database itself.
Cool. Let's see here. Next question. Do you have plans to allow editing of content from feature services in the ArcGIS platform without the need for a basic license? This will make it easier to deploy apps to the App Store at a more affordable price point. The answer to that is yes, and you'll be pleased to know that in Update 11, we will support the ability to edit feature services as part of the ArcGIS platform with an API key or named user as part of platform when it's out of beta. And so Update 11 will support that at the light license level. So be looking forward to that in the next release. Just a reminder, Update 11 is set to ship before the end of this month. Let's see, next question. Our geometry engine, oh. Okay, that's from Ewan. Geometry engine runtime. There we go. This is the wonders of the Q&A experience in Slido. Okay, so there's another question about the service-focused version of Runtime Planned. Again, great to get some feedback on what you guys are looking to support there. We do have, obviously you can provide us with details on the ArcGIS Ideas site where there's an idea out there that's focused on this. Ask Our Experts here at the Dev Summit is great to get some additional feedback. Or the Esri community forums, great too as well. Next question, what's the best overview of how the rendering pipeline works in runtime? All right, who wants to take that one?
I can take a stab at that. You know, unfortunately, I don't think I have a great answer for you. We don't provide any detailed information of this, that implementation. We just don't think it'll be interesting to many of you. That's our burden, something for us to continue to improve and implement. However, there was a blog post that we did put out a year or so ago that did describe a lot of the internals of the rendering engine and how we performed selection and how we were improving to it. So I'll point you at that. That gives you a glimpse into like one aspect of the rendering engine. But if there's interest in knowing about this information, we can definitely do a session about it at an upcoming conference or provide more insight. We just think that that's sort of our work to do and yours to benefit from.
Actually, there was a session that one of our colleagues presented at a previous Dev Summit called Squeezing Every Ounce of Performance from ArcGIS Runtime. Some aspects of that may have been updated and changed over time. I think that was presented a few years ago, but a lot of the content there is still relatively relevant. I'll try and find a link to that session and share the proceedings link.
Cool. Great, thanks, Devesh and Mike. Okay, next question. Are there any plans to break up runtime into smaller deployment options? There are no current plans to do that at this stage. Our community has expressed concerns about the size of runtime and the fact that all of runtime functionality, as it's built as a native library, is included, even though only maybe portions of it are being used. So something that we're maybe considering long term, but there are no current plans to break it up into small deployment options at this stage. Let's see here. When should I use a runtime API versus building an app with App Studio?
I can take this one.
Cool, go for it, James.
So it really depends on the use case. If you have an idea of an app and App Studio provides an out-of-the-box template and you just need to do some minor tweaks, App Studio is probably the solution for you. Or if you don't have a team of engineers who want to learn a new language, if you just want to use an out-of-the-box template, App Studio is probably the best solution. However, if you want a more customized solution where you feel like none of the App Studio templates are going to really fit your needs out of the box, you might want go towards the runtime SDKs at that point, of which there is a QML API runtime SDK. So yeah, it's really based on the use case. It just depends on how deep into the API you need to go. Like I would boil it down into, if you can use one of their templates and you think you would only need some minor adjustments to it, I would go with App Studio. It's going to be a little bit easier, lower barrier of entry. If you really need to tweak things, if you really need to build an app from the ground up, I would go for the runtime SDKs.
Cool, great. Thanks, James. All right, another question. We're venturing outside of runtime here, so we need to put maybe a different hat or two on, just in case, see what happens here. The next question is, I've developed quite a few Python add-ins for ArcMap for business users in different departments to use. Any suggestion which direction to go for upgrade, ArcGIS Pro add-in or web app? So this is certainly not within our wheelhouse, I'll say that, as it's not related to runtime. But is there anyone on the call who wants to make a comment on this specifically? I'm not sure if we're in the right position to do that.
I mean, I guess there's a couple of different approaches you can take, right? If you wanted to build a ArcGIS Pro add-in or a configuration to simplify the UI, that would be fine from a desktop perspective. It's 2021, right? In a lot of ways, most people prefer to use web apps now. So I would certainly consider that option as well, but it's really an architectural decision for you to make and for you to evaluate.
Cool, thanks, Rich. Next question.
We do have a,
sorry.
Sorry, Rex.
Go for it, Mike.
We do have an additional component available for ArcGIS Runtime, which is the ArcGIS Runtime local server, and that essentially has a Python execution engine that you can write Python scripts. You can write those within Pro, make calls into the various Python libraries, use geoprocessing tools, package your Python script as a geoprocessing package, and then you can use that within ArcGIS Runtime applications that you build either with the .NET SDK, the Qt SDK, or the Java SDK. So that would work on Windows or Linux in that case.
Cool, thanks, Mike. Next question, are there any plans for ArcObjects, C# to create ArcMap add-ins? Because we don't see much materials for ArcObjects.net. We can see only runtime SDK materials. Is ArcObjects out of the picture now? Not sure whether this is the right place to ask the question. I say in general, for native application developers, we're encouraging developers or members of the ArcGIS developer community to use runtime going forward. That's where we're spending most of our time and encouraging folks building out native client-side applications. That said, if we're dealing with ArcObjects, ArcGIS Engine, they're still products at this point, and of course, ArcMap is still available. And so being able to build add-ins for ArcMap is still supported. We are encouraging folks that are moving from add-ins in ArcMap to the next generation of our desktop technology, which is ArcGIS Pro, to look at what ArcGIS Pro provides to create a similar or a complementary add-in to ArcGIS Pro. If you're looking at creating a native standalone client application, then ArcGIS Runtime is your language or your technology of choice. All right. So next question, documentation. Would you consider allowing API doc for versions other than the current version online? We used to have this. We don't have it now. Devesh, you want to talk about this? Or Mike?
Well, Devesh, you can go first.
We do plan on making the doc available for you to download for a version that you're interested in. I don't think we made the decision whether we will host all of that content online side by side with all of the other content. I think that's just some feedback we can take on board and see where it goes.
And then I think the way each of the SDK teams builds their API references to try and match the API reference of the underlying platform. And within the .NET team, we've been looking at alternative tools that we can use to build the API reference. and follow a pattern more like you get with the .NET API browser, that when you're browsing .NET APIs today. So we've been experimenting with switches to allow us to pick different frameworks or runtimes, and then also see when different APIs were introduced to different versions of the runtime. So we're looking at not necessarily posting multiple versions, but within one single API reference experience, being able to allowing you to switch between the versions and also see when we introduced different pieces of the API. But that's kind of active research development work. I'm not sure when we'll be able to release that yet, but we hope to be able to bring that out to you soon.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, it's good feedback. Actually, as it is something that we'd posted before at this point, so it'd be good to see, good to take into consideration. Let's see here. There's a general question here. Well, actually, we'll go back to the question on the ArcGIS Runtime maximizing performance of your apps presentation on the YouTube channel that's available. It is 4 years old, and it's based on 100.0. Although the concepts and techniques are still pertinent, is there any chance of a refresh? So that is a good question. Probably something we'll take into consideration for an upcoming developer summit that we could take a look back at, considering 100.0 was released over 4 years ago. Even though the architecture and the generation of runtime is the same, there could be some enhancements or some optimizations that we could make to that session. But I think that's a great feedback, something we could take into consideration for the future. So thanks for that. Another question, are there any plans to add Kotlin APIs to the Android Runtime API? Rama,
Yeah.
You want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, we discussed this in the previous session, the road ahead session also. In general, I think we are looking into it. We are currently in the phase of collecting ideas or the feedbacks from different people who are using Kotlin as their language for their app development, and then using our SDK, the Java Android SDK. So we are collecting all the feedback. So definitely it's something that's in plans, but the thing that we cannot commit right now is probably the deadline of when it would be available and things like that. But just want to mention that it's something that is in plans and under discussions.
Great. Thanks, Rama. Yeah, good stuff. So we need feedback to determine priority, basically, right? So that's great. Another question here is the publisher extension required to create an MMPK to be used in a custom runtime app without users signing in? I believe the answer to that is technically no. The publisher extension at this time is primarily designed for Explorer users. Okay, let's see here. There is a general question. What are, each of the people that are answering, your favorite runtime functionalities?
Oh, it's definitely the model.
The
The model scene symbol. I do like being able to fly airplanes around the Grand Canyon.
Nice call out, Mark, actually. Anyone else?
Well, for me, it was the last thing I worked on, which was name trace configurations for the utility network.
Fantastic. All right.
I like playing with the navigation API. I do like that.
Yep.
Probably because I end up writing too many demos with it, but I like what it does and I like how it does it.
Nice.
I'm partial to the high accuracy NEMA support we just added, because primarily we wanted to add it for so long, and it also exemplifies where runtime shines, where you can use accessories that are connected to your desktop or mobile device.
Nice.
Yeah, for me, I think probably the one I recently worked on with the feature tiles with feature services. That's a great enhancement to the product itself.
Yeah.
Really improved the rendering performance of the feature layers.
Nice. Yeah. Major benefits. I know, Mike.
I'm I'm torn between two areas. The first one would be the new scene layer performance work that we're doing to update the scene layer implementation to support i3s 1.7. If you were in the Road Ahead session, you would have seen the dramatic performance difference that update brings to the performance of the integrated mesh and 3D objects layers and runtime. But my other favorite area has to be the local server and all the great capabilities I can bring in terms of geoprocessing and analysis.
Nice, nice. James?
Well, I really like routing and navigation because it's such a fundamental thing that you can show to anyone and really showcase the power of the runtime. And you don't really need to be a GIS expert to understand what it does and why you would need it and why it's helpful.
Nice.
Well, I'm going to add. I'm going to throw something else out there. I like service area with a mobile map package because you can really just slide that thing around the screen and see exactly what service area does.
The performance
it's fun and it's useful.
It's great, right?
Performance is great. Yeah, and people understand it too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
You show it to people who don't know what it is and they get it straight away.
Yeah, indeed. That's great. I have to admit, I liked our introduction of augmented reality actually within Runtime. I thought that was our first foray into AR space on mobile devices. While it's not necessarily absolutely complete, it is functional and it provides folks with a workflow that they can choose to use to leverage AR capabilities. So great for Runtime to be kind of the first developer technology within Esri to dip into the AR space. Kind of a predecessor for some of the work that we end up seeing in the ArcGIS Maps SDKs for game engines. So I like that. Good stuff. Good question. I like that. Let's see here. There's another question here. If you're interested in how to optimize your application, we do have okay, that's a comment on the doc for optimization. In the runtime related polls today, I saw separate Windows desktop and Windows laptop platforms. What's the difference? Is there anything to consider? Well, I could answer that, but Nick, do you want to take a stab at that one?
I mean, only because I created the polls. Yeah, no, that was really just an effort for us to try to understand the kinds of hardware that people are targeting. And for me, what was actually, that kind of drew out of the offline sessions that I was presenting. And it's surprising how many people were building offline solutions and targeting desktop. I wasn't really expecting to see that, but that's why I threw that in the poll. In terms of implementation, Rex and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no difference. I mean, you're probably dealing with some different UI concepts, but none of that's within the runtime. That's a app development level type of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's more mobility basically related, right? Sorry, Mike, go for it.
It's probably, we don't differentiate typically much internally in the implementation between Windows desktops and laptops. There's things to think about in terms of form factor, whether that Windows device has a touchscreen and whether you're working on a kind of touch-centric application, taking advantage of some of the more modern UI features, perhaps. I think with Windows, it's also important to think about integrated graphics versus discrete GPUs, such as NVIDIA or AMD. And then also whether that Windows hardware has built-in sensors, such as GPS or something else.
True. Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Another question here. It looks like could WASM or WebAssembly impact the efforts of the runtimes in the years to come? Is this a good or bad thing? Well, I think it has to some level actually impacted us already. How we expose that for public use, I think, is still yet to be seen. Could be a good thing. I don't know, any comments from the gallery on this? Any thoughts?
It's something we've looked at in the Qt team because we know the Qt company has rolled out support for WebAssembly as a target.
Yep.
And it's something that I know we've done a little bit of internal R&D. I think it's something we could support, but again, like you mentioned, Rex, it's something we need to figure out what's the roadmap for something like that. How would people use it? What's the compelling use cases for it? So still a little bit more work to be done with that.
Yeah, looking at some business needs there too, actually, as well, right? Just trying to evaluate priorities in that space too, so that would help for sure. Again, something that would be great for you to reach out with maybe some details on how you intend to use it or how you see it being valuable in your workflows. ArcGIS Ideas site, great. Obviously, follow-up questions on the Esri community helps too. So, another question here: are there any plans to add any variations to scene view hit test to support things such as sphere casting, line casting, etc.? Mike, do you want to take a crack at that one?
I could, but I don't have a particularly extensive answer. I suppose there are some things we're looking at in terms of supporting other workflows, such as building a 3D sketch editor or something like that. So working out different types of intersections with objects in the scene.
Follow comment: an extension to the hit test question is a non-screen space operation, so hit testing based off supplied geographic positions. It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to find out maybe some of the use cases there too, to kind of help us drive some of those capabilities going forward. I think technically a lot of these are possible. I think it's just trying to get an understanding of the implementation necessary that we need to be able to showcase that capability. So it's a good question for sure. Great. All right, guys, any additional questions out there? For good measure, I'm going to go out and take a look at the board just to see if anything happened to show up. Nope, nothing new. Okay. Oh, here we go. With the upcoming release of the ArcGIS Maps SDKs for game engines, what will it mean for AR support in runtime? It's a good question. So obviously both the ArcGIS Runtime SDKs and the ArcGIS Maps SDKs are designed for native developers. There are capabilities that are built into game engines that make it an ideal environment for building out extended reality solutions, which includes AR, whether it's AR on a mobile device or AR on a headset. And so we'll be encouraging folks who want to be able to build AR experiences that require really stereoscopic viewing, or think of it as like a mixed reality experience, to target and use game engines going forward. That said, the ArcGIS Runtime still includes AR support for mobile devices, iOS and Android devices, right? Single screen devices. And so, and right now basically has a kind of an AR sticker approach, sort of a geolocated AR sticker approach to AR capabilities. And that will still be available, will still be supported. We'll still be encouraging folks that are using technologies that support targeting iOS and Android with runtime SDKs going forward to use that AR capability. But if you're looking for something that's a little more immersive, something that maybe provides, built-in occlusion or is able to target a variety of additional data device types for AR experiences, then game engines will probably be the place that you want to land. Again, it also relies on some of the talent and technique that you have and techniques that your development team has available. So we'll be supporting AR. We'll continue to support AR and runtime as it is today, but we're going to be spending quite a bit of time developing support for AR capabilities founded on what game engines deliver and the breadth and depth of devices that they target. So we'll see them sort of complement each other in some way. There'll be a little bit of overlap in that space going forward. With the Maps SDKs themselves, we're probably looking at adding some additional, think of it as a kind of a toolkit for the ArcGIS Maps SDKs later this year when we get closer to our first production release at the end of the year, that will provide better support for AR experiences going forward. And that means better geolocation, better geopositioning, and camera orientation as well. So be looking for that in an upcoming pre-release for Maps SDKs, which I think will be probably June or July of this year. So, but they'll live side by side. Let's see here. You mentioned something about MMPK's Publisher Extension and Explorer. I only caught half of what was said. Could you repeat that? Explorer is no longer supported as being replaced by field maps. It would be good if the Publisher Extension can provide more value for runtime users. So we are looking at how Publisher could be used in some capacity with custom applications built by runtime developers. We don't have a roadmap on that right now, as far as I'm aware, but we are looking at different options for making that available or for utilizing some of those capabilities. We'll see where that lands at this point.
I mean, right now, what the publisher extension can do for you as developing custom apps is package expiration, right? So the field maps team obviously takes advantage of package expiration, but they also look at publisher extension to allow anonymous access. And then as a runtime developer building custom apps, you can take advantage of the expiration yourself. In fact, there's two forms. There's like a soft expiration and a hard expiration. Runtime won't even open an MMPK that's past its hard expiration date. With a soft expiration, you'll get a notice as the developer, and you can warn the user yourself with your own user experience and have a workflow that encourages them to pull down a fresh MMPK from somewhere.
Okay, another question. How do you access the Smart Forms API through the REST API with the item ID for a particular smart form? So I guess either Devesh or Rama, do you guys want to tackle that?
I can take that. So you can get the smart form definition through the JSON that our layers provide. So any JSON that our layers don't act upon, you can access through the unknown and unsupported JSON properties. You'll find that the smart form definitions inside there for the feature layers that were configured with smart forms. And then you can start to build out user experience yourself based on that definition. But that's a pretty heavy workaround. You're going to spend many hundreds of hours trying to build that. So I think a better tactic would be for you to connect with us and tell us how you plan to use it and how it's important to you, so we can try and prioritize it accordingly, because that is something that we do want to build eventually for all runtime users and their custom apps. But if you just cannot wait for us, then you'll get the JSON through the layer.
Cool. Thanks, Devesh. Okay. Next question. Is there a way to save a map in the runtime to a map document that can be used in ArcGIS Pro? If not, is there a plan for it? All right. Anyone want to tackle this? Devesh, are you on again?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that.
Mhm.
You can definitely save a web map from ArcGIS Runtime to your portal or ArcGIS Online and use that in ArcGIS Pro. That's one way you can do that. I'd say that's the mainstream way in which that workflow would be supported. If you want to make it work offline or from a map on disk, that's a conversation that I think we should have, because I think there could be some rough edges with that.
Gotcha. Cool. And I think that might be the last question we have.
There was a question that came and went about somebody was asking where they can make suggestions about new functionality they might wanting adding in. So I just point out in the GNet area of the website, there is a ArcGIS Runtime Ideas area there. So if anybody wanted to put any thoughts for new functionality they wanted adding in, that's a good place to put it. We monitor that very closely.
Indeed. Okay. Okay, there it is. Okay, great. So, yeah, same kind of. Great. Okay, so Mike, and that question about asking for additional functionality, you added a link to the ideas site that Mark mentioned.
I shared a link there to the ideas area on the community site.
How many people are developing with the runtime SDKs? That's a good question. We only have estimates at this point because there's no requirement actually to tell us when you're developing. Mike, did you want to say something on that? Or?
No, I was just saying I am.
Okay. Oh, you're okay. Okay, gotcha. Can we take a show of hands? Right, exactly. It is difficult to know how many folks we have developing on the runtime SDKs. We can assess that based upon the frequency of use, and we do monitor frequency of use of runtime in some cases with ArcGIS Online. We do monitor the number of downloads of ArcGIS Runtime. We do have polls that we gather on a number of occasions. We also see the number of participants at events that are using Runtime and take that into account. From what we're seeing is the use of Runtime continues to grow exponentially and grew significantly over the last year and a half. The number of downloads, total downloads of ArcGIS Runtime SDKs for 100.x for all Runtime SDKs exceeded 1 million earlier this year. And so we've got quite a bit of product out there at this stage. We're probably seeing, I would say, daily, anywhere from 15 to 20 million requests from custom ArcGIS Runtime applications to ArcGIS Online every day. And that continues to grow month to month, year to year. So we're seeing a lot of success in that space. Over the last year, about a year ago, a little over a year and a half ago, we retired our 10.2x products. And what we saw right after that was basically a jump in a lot of efforts to migrate from ArcGIS Runtime 10.2x to ArcGIS Runtime 100.x at that point, so the latest generation. And so we did see a kind of a burst of development efforts there in Runtime. But we're also seeing a lot of what appears to be a lot of different newer customers come on board and start working with Runtime, displacing other maybe competitive technology. As the ArcGIS system advances and more functionality, more capabilities roll into the system as a whole, and that might be through enterprise, through online, through pro, through the platform, and those additional capabilities roll into Runtime, we see more value add actually in that space. And so I would say we've never seen Runtime as popular as it is now. And so we're looking to take advantage of that maturity and that stability and continue to grow Runtime going forward. So very healthy, very functional, I'll say that. Our team is probably about 160 people right now. So we're just a select few that get the privilege of representing the great and talented folks that are working on the Runtime team here. So there's certainly a sizable effort to advance Runtime going forward too. So we see a lot of value. Obviously, Esri sees a lot of tremendous value in Runtime, and we'll continue to develop it going forward.
And not to mention that there are other teams in Esri who are building components that go into Runtime. So if you take all of that, it's well over 200 people.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of shared work that's going on there, a lot of collaboration between teams. Yeah, matter of fact, if there's a choice within Esri itself, we see more apps being used to build, or more native apps being used or being built using Runtime, and a lot of the capabilities that they need are flowing into the Runtime API that's available for developers to take advantage of too. And so we continue to see a lot of progress in that space too, which certainly helps drive advancements within the Runtime API and enhances Runtime for our developer community too. So it's great to see that kind of feedback happen on a regular basis. Good stuff. Another question here. After Runtime adds support for mobile geodatabases exported from Pro, are feature editing capabilities going to be supported? Similar to sync-enabled feature services, are we going to need to follow a similar take-offline workflow? So I think the idea there is that we want to be able to spend, and this was covered in the road ahead earlier today, is that with the ability or the addition of support for standalone mobile geodatabases, or mobile geodatabases that don't have or don't rely on our feature service model for metadata, that really match or find parity with file and enterprise geodatabases that store the different elements and types that a geodatabase would store, is expected to store, and clients be able to honor and recognize those types. As we begin to support that within Runtime, part of that use of a mobile geodatabase directly that's been created from Pro will involve the ability to edit. Now at this stage, our editing capabilities with private data private data are available through our basic license level. So while we haven't decided this yet, it's still undecided. It's likely that when you're editing data in a mobile view database that's been created from ArcGIS Pro, it's likely we're looking at requiring basic, but again, it's still, subject to change, yet to be decided. At that point, there won't be necessarily a take offline workflow actually at that point, because you'll actually just be working with data directly within Pro. You'll be creating a mobile view database just like you'd create a shapefile actually, and work with it in runtime today from Pro, except now you'd be working with a mobile view database founded on SQLite with the extensive capabilities that we find within the geodatabase model. And so as we start to move runtime towards supporting that directly, we'll begin to not just light up the ability to read, but edit, and the licensing that goes along with that too. So we're looking forward to that, hopefully lighting up by the end of this year, or starting to light up by the end of this year. There's a lot of work there that we need to do in runtime. So it's gonna be a multi-phased effort to support the standalone mobile view database from Pro. We fully intend to support that. Let's see here. So I answered the question just to make sure folks were aware. I think we answered the question on the number of people developing runtime SDKs and how many engineers are building runtime, 160 plus many others actually collaborating with us around this within Esri. So a sizable effort going on there. Let me take a look at this. So there is a comment here on the, looks like .NET. Esri ArcGIS Runtime.toolkit still has references to the deprecated Android support namespaces. Any plans to change that? So I suspect this is .NET.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Or maybe, is it something that you're familiar with, Rama?
Looks like something for Xamarin.
Yeah.
It could be. I'll take a look at that. I'll investigate.
Okay. For the .NET toolkit, are you guys accepting PRs? Mike?
We would love to see PRs in the .NET toolkit. Feel free to submit a PR.
Indeed. Like to see some collaboration there for sure. Encourage it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Okay, next one. When would we be able to symbolize raster imagery in runtime, like applying colors or stretches? Devesh, you want to handle that one?
Sure. So we do already support some basic raster symbolization, especially for local rasters. So you can apply a stretch, you can choose a color amp, or you can specify RGB values for different bands. So we support that. If your question's more about applying these to image services, that's something that we're going to have to look into, and it'll be good to get an idea of the type of functionality you want for us to sort of prioritize that. But take a look at what we've got with local rasters. That should cover some of the things you were asking.
Cool, thanks, Devesh. Any plans to add a distance-based clustering solution for points in the graphics overlay to a runtime API? Clustering, that's a favorite. Actually, I should have mentioned that before in a previous or an older technology. I like clustering. Call me crazy. I don't know why, right? The Flare cluster from like 10 years ago, magic. It was great. Does anyone on the call?
I hear it's coming back into fashion, Rex.
I hear it is. It's coming back around. It's coming back around. I can feel it. There you go. Flare cluster. Anyone want to provide a little insight on this at this stage?
Go for it, Rex.
Okay,
since you love it so much.
So we'd love to see this come back into the runtime API. There are some plans. There's a number of different clustering types that we're looking at. And the first one is really a feature reduction based clustering solution that's really powered through a common design that we find within the web map specification. And so we do see this type of clustering capability exposed through our JavaScript API. And we do see that available through our map viewer because it's based on JavaScript. We'd like to be able to follow that model. Now, Pro's in the same boat here too, right? So they don't support clustering out of the box, but we'd like to be able to provide a common sort of language agnostic approach to supporting clustering. And so that's probably our first effort there. We have this in the backlog. We'd like to get it into a swim lane here so that we could get some work done in this space and see that that light up for you guys. So it's certainly in our backlog near term. We'll see if we can get this in here as soon as possible. So glad to see you guys are still interested in this. I have to admit, this is probably one of the most popular requests for new features that we've seen over the years. Next question, how mature is local raster layer display support in runtime for .NET? What file types are best supported? What are limited? So again, a raster layer support, local raster layer support in runtime, specifically .NET, but obviously this is capability that's shared across all runtime SDKs. So Mike, did you want to talk about that since there's a little .NET twist in there, just for fun?
Sure. I think the support is pretty mature. It's been available for several releases now. The number of formats are documented online in the documentation. We did actually, for the upcoming 111 release, we did actually make a nice tweak to our Mr. Sid support, which gives a nice, I can't remember, tens of % of improved performance. So a really good performance boost for Mr. Sid imagery in the runtime.
Nice. Release. Yeah, probably important to note that we're always paying attention and looking at performance improvements in runtime now as we start to optimize. And so, where we can make improvements, we make them. So this is another great opportunity to mention some of those improvements in raster coming soon. So yeah, great to see. Thanks, Mike. ArcGIS Runtime SDK for iOS, do you have any plans to change state management in Swift UI, especially a conflict between navigating in map and doing something with state? Devesh?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. I mean, as part of our work on the new Swift API to better support Swift UI, we're completely reimagining how that would work and feel natural in a Swift UI pattern for developers. There are going to be some changes in how you get information from the map view or scene view, how you'll bind it to the different state variables in your Swift UI app and things like that. I'm not really sure about the conflict that's being referred to between navigating the map and doing something with it. We need to have a deeper conversation about what you're seeing probably with the UI kit-based approach, and then we can discuss what solutions we might have in Swift UI, if any, to resolve those.
Might be a good candidate for a kind of a finishing question within the Ask the Experts Expo, or maybe even a follow-up in the Esri community, actually for some more details on this after this session, as we're running up with a couple minutes left actually, so almost out of time. Great, thanks Devesh. All right, we got one last question here. Any thought of using true date time offset in runtime? Now it looks like even when local times are specified in the map service, date field's time zone ID setting or editor tracking local fields, you get UTC date time offsets that are really just chopped off date time. Now I see some types there that look like .NET actually. Mike, is there anything here you want to comment on, or anything that you're aware of in this space?
No, I'm not aware of any work that we're planning in that area at the moment.
I can quickly add something. Yeah. So I'm not sure if this speaks to the question asked, but I know there are sometimes problems when clients like Runtime or web apps request dates from services. We translate it into UTC instead of displayed in the device time zone instead of the time zone that the service author expected users to work with. That sometimes causes changes in dates, because if you go over midnight. So there are enhancements rolling out to the system to make that more known and to handle it consistently based on what the map author wants the end user to look at.
Okay, so potential for for some trouble there in the, I guess, in the links in the chain, right? Just the being able to communicate with the service and get the appropriate dates back. Yeah, okay. Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, I know we're right up against the end of our time here, close to 3 p.m. Pacific time. Just want to thank you guys for joining us in this session. Thank you for all the great questions. Hopefully we provided some answers for you that you can take away. and utilize. Again, if you'd like to be able to ask some questions during this conference, feel free to go to the Ask the Experts Expo. If there's something that you'd like to get some immediate response on, you can also use our Esri community, the 2021 live Q&A board for this session. So feel free to ask a question there, and we'll try and get to it as soon as possible. Again, thanks for taking the time, and thanks for all the presenters for answering the questions and making this another great event, a great conference. Guys, until next time, guys. Looking forward to talking again in the future.